I have a couple of little, I'll call them housekeeping, but they're not really, just things unrelated to the questions you've given me, which are quite a few. Okay. We have mentioned the masters and discipleship and various things somewhat in passing. Some of you we have been connected with for the many weeks that we've been here, and some of you have expressed an interest in making a deeper commitment to this path. And we have a discipleship ceremony, which we actually offered the first Sunday that we were here, 5 weeks ago. And we'd like to make it part of the Sunday service tomorrow at the very end of the service. So this is the discipleship vow. It's printed here. And we have copies available back in the back on the podium. It's very much just your decision. It's not as, you don't have to receive permission from us. It's if you feel that this is the right thing for you, we're happy to facilitate that, just acting as an instrument because the masters are not here to do it for us. So if you'd like to just take a look at this and think about it, if you'd like to talk to any one of us, I say us, Kavita, Brian, the three of you who just took the discipleship vow at the beginning of the year, these three, your friends who, when we first arrived here, felt they were ready. If you'd like to talk to any one of us about this to decide if it's right for you, please go ahead. And then we'll just, do let us know. There's just very little that you need to do. You need to bring a flower as a symbol of your donation, your devotion, and some money wrapped in a paper or in an envelope as a symbol of your desire for other people also to be helped. That's, whatever amount of money is meaningful to you. It's symbolic rather than, it's not a price. And so that will be at the very end of our Sunday tomorrow, and those of you who aren't participating, it's a very sweet ceremony to watch. And so I just wanted to say that was one. And two, also about tomorrow, we decided Ananda has a few ceremonies, not a gazillion, just a few. One of them is part of the service, the Festival of Light we're doing tomorrow morning. Another is called the Purification Service, and it's an opportunity for you individually to offer into the divine light, symbolically at the altar, either something that you would like to be freed from, or something that you would like to bring into your life. You can express it either way. As part of that ceremony, ministers in Ananda are called light bearers, and Dambara and I are both light bearers. It's a responsibility that's given to us. And as part of that, we have the opportunity to bless you in the name of the masters. So the purification ceremony is the opportunity to receive a personal blessing. It's done, we're sitting and we ask you to kneel in front of us, but it's a line like this. It's not really us who are doing it. We're not Catholic priests who have the power to get rid of your karma. We're just acting on behalf of. And if you wish, you say, I seek purification by the grace of God. We bless you in the name of the masters, and afterwards you have the opportunity to make an offering at the altar. Because not all of you know us or feel comfortable with any of this, it's also possible for you to just walk right to the altar and make your offering tomorrow. You don't have to use us as intermediaries if you don't want to. It's perfectly acceptable. So the first 20 minutes, starting at 10 o'clock, maybe till 10:20, it depends how many people want to participate. That ceremony will be going on in here. We'll play Swami Kriyananda chanting Om, which is a marvelous meditation all by itself, so even if you don't want to participate, if you just sit here and listen to that. If you don't really want to be any part of it, just arrive at 10:20. Okay? I think that's clear enough. If there's any question, the purification is very simple. It's not like the discipleship. You're not like making a decision for the rest of your life. This is just a few minutes of your time. Okay? Yes, Atmaja.
By offering, you mean to give something up that you no longer wish to hold, like anger or impatience or...
Right, definitely. Something you'd like to have dissolved from your life. This is where you stand here and you say, you're better at this than I am, can you help me? That's really what you're doing. It becomes more mystical than that, but that's essentially what you're asking. Okay?
Is it a list or just one item?
Oh, you write it out in private. You don't confess. You fold it up, you walk over here, you ignite it on a candle. So preferably don't use a big sheet, okay? But you can write a small one on both sides.
We have blue papers.
Yeah, we have papers for it. Yeah, no, they're medium sized. They're about like that. Okay. Oh, then you made them tiny?
Yeah, they're very tiny.
Okay.
You can write on the back.
All right. I think that's it. I wanted to also, I recognize, I'm perfectly conscious of how complex everything I told you this morning was. And there's no, this is for me, you know, to spin this out is literally decades of study and thinking on this. And I make it as clear and as simple as possible. But just like I was saying about Swami and the dead planet and all of those things, it's sort of like little pieces of it will pop out. And it doesn't matter, because if you get anything that moves you forward, the act of moving forward will expand your understanding, and then the next little bit will come. Which is why when we started several different times, I said, just why am I here? Help me to be receptive for whatever I can learn next. We always imagine that progress looks like I'm standing here and whoop, I'm over there. But it doesn't. It looks like this. That's really what it looks like. But that's progress, because this is what it looks like not to progress. And if you do that long enough, you actually find yourself really quite someplace else that you didn't expect to be. And of course, what I've tried to do here is to awaken the idea that there's something that's possible to do. But the obvious question is, how do I do it? Oh, well, you spend the rest of your life. But what we're trying to do here is, the way Swamiji would often put it, you can live next door to the best restaurant in the world, but if you're not hungry, it won't do you any good. So in an hour and a half, but we've had much more than an hour and a half or 2 hours together, because the whole weekend is all about the same thing, it makes us hungry. And that's what a lot of the music is also about. You know, sometimes some people have said to us that Ananda music can be sad. I mean, Move All You Mountains in Manana wasn't sad. But some of it can be sad because unless you're hungry, you won't move towards something. So a lot of spiritual life is about awakening longing. And so you do, I don't find it sad, I find it inspiring. But until you get tuned into that, that's what the chanting is, you know, a lot of that. The cloister song we sang last night, wilt thou come, wilt thou come? It's like, well, isn't he listening? Why doesn't he come? But what you're doing is you're awakening it in your own heart. You're making it important enough to you that, to me, to us, that we'll actually do something about it. And the doing something about it is, as you may have noticed, there's a whole big table of books. If you go to the Ananda New Zealand website, I don't think do we have that online resources printed out? Anyway, but there's so many online resources these days. Wherever you live in the world, you're right next door to great teachings because of the internet. So on the Ananda New Zealand website right now, there's something called resources. If you just go there, online classes and books, you know, e-books, lessons, and also I have a YouTube channel, and everything that I do is posted on there. That's why Brian always has the camera up. And people all over the world are watching these same classes. A couple of days after we do it, I'm getting letters from everywhere. You know, I loved the one in Wellington about karma and so on like that, from people, Europe, India, Africa, everywhere. Because that's just how the world works these days. So if you're hungry, there's a whole lot of places that you can find something more. Okay? Anything else that needs to be said? Does anyone else know something I've forgotten? Okay. I have some real humdingers here. But I'm glad of that. Okay.
Would you tell the joke about the turtle and the snail one more time?
Do you really want me to tell it? Okay. Oh no, I can't do it now. I'll have to wait till it's spontaneous. I can't perform on demand. Okay. All right, I'll just start from the top here. And I should say, I have a whole book about this. Well, I mean, I just actually, little more small piece of business. This is Dambaru's CD. So Dambaru's CD. So if you enjoy his singing and these songs, and it's lovely.
And if you don't buy it anyway.
Pardon me? And this is a whole book I made out of this sort of thing. I got asked many, many questions on our website over a couple of years. I took 39 of the most interesting ones. And they range there, they go from a whole variety of questions like, why are you wearing blue? I had to put my Great Dane to sleep. I feel so guilty about it. My spouse, who was unfaithful to me for 15 years, wants to come back. What do I do about that? I don't love the man I'm married to. You know, I love the man who won't marry me. It go on and on. It's very interesting. Did aliens invade the world years ago and intermingle with earthlings, and is that the explanation for all the evil? That is my favorite question. This is also, it's called Loved and Protected, Stories of Miracles and Answered Prayers. I wrote this at Swami Kriyananda's request. I collected hundreds of stories of divine intervention in people's lives, from dramatic to seemingly mundane, but it's a really entertaining, easy read. And if you're just looking for something to just lift your spirit without taxing your intellect too hard, this is it. It's very good. Okay, that's it. All right. Let's see. This is about fear of failure, a sense of guilt inhibiting us, fear of really trying to go forward because of fear perhaps that you won't succeed at doing it. And also the other question was, how do you deal with desires that you really want something and that you're trying to be on a practice where you're supposed to renounce all your desires and at the same time you have desires? I'm going to just take this question from the heart of it without being as exact about it as the question was asked. I think the single most difficult thing on the spiritual path is to come to peace with our own reality. And this is where I was saying this at the very beginning of this. What Yogananda has done is he's put our spiritual life, the responsibility for it, right in our own hands. And we have no one to blame, and we have no excuses, and therefore we have to just come into a settled reality of, look, this is who I really am. When Yogananda was alive, Swami Kriyananda lived with him for 3.5 years. Now, we think, you read Autobiography of a Yogi, if you read Autobiography of a Yogi, if you're magnetized by it, you're inclined to think, oh, I would have loved to have been able to be like Swami Kriyananda and cross the country and have time with Yogananda. Swami Kriyananda said there were very few disciples. Yogananda was a huge success doing these huge lectures. Thousands, literally, of people came. But when it came time to get serious, there was just a tiny handful. Literally, he gave class for 5,000 people once, and 5 people came to the classes. And then Swami Kriyananda said, living at the ashram was a converted hotel. It had been a hotel previous, before Yogananda bought it. And Kriyananda said it remained a hotel. Disciples checked in, and then they checked out. And he said the reason that people left Yogananda had nothing to do with Yogananda, but in the presence of so much light, and in the presence of that just calm radiation of truth, everything about yourself was illuminated. And you weren't able to hide and prevaricate and put on a good show. It's just, he would just very calmly, without judgment, but nonetheless very calmly, just illuminated what the truth was. And most people ran away from that. They just couldn't accept themselves. So we can complicate this in all sorts of ways. We can call it, I have a desire for this that I shouldn't have, I'm guilty about this that I shouldn't have. But it really comes down to a very simple principle. You cannot work until you can accept what is. You cannot move forward from what is. And a lot of people on the spiritual path are really keen, the way I put it, on working out someone else's karma. Like, that person or that ideal or that principle is a person who's world-renouncing and doesn't need anything. They don't need human love. They don't need human comfort. They don't need this. I think I'll work on their karma, right? And I'll try to renounce this and renounce that and not want this and be guilty about this and pretend that. But it doesn't work because it's not yours. And very often we imagine that The test in front of us is not the test that's in front of us. The test is not to renounce all of our desires. The test is to come to peace with the fact that I have all these desires. And given all these desires, what does progress look like for me? Because until you do that, you'll just be running in circles all the time. And there's no way to fail at the spiritual path. You can't fail at it. You can't get off of it. You can't get away from it. It's just a matter of time. And since time doesn't exist, it doesn't even really make any difference. People also love this idea that this is my last incarnation. I'm not going to have any more incarnations. I believe, and Yogananda said, that Kriyananda's incarnation was his last incarnation. Many, many, many sources, including Yogananda himself, declared that. You all didn't know him, I did. The difference between us is a lot. This is what it looks like to be in your last incarnation. This is what it looks like to not be in your last incarnation. And so it's just, let's not worry about stuff like that. Just whatever we're doing is what we are, and that's the expansive direction for us. You see? This is, I said this earlier. Whenever you're standing at any crossroads, and that crossroads is anything that creates disharmony, what's expansive, what's contractive? And oddly, what's expansive is to just say, you know, I want to be loved, I want a family, I want children, I don't have it now, I really want it. And you just, God is your friend. You know, this is what I want. Either do something to make me not want it, or do something to give me a chance to have it. Because we can't just sit here and pretend it's not true. Does that make sense? That's what I was talking about last night, about spending so much energy trying to fool Swami Kriyananda. What a waste of energy. Divine Mother's looking right at your heart. You think you're shining him on? Get over it. and then it becomes so much fun. Really, it becomes so much fun. Because here we are just doing our best. And sometimes it's embarrassing. Sometimes it's real embarrassing. But it's what is. How will we ever get anywhere until we're just at peace? And think about it, one more thing. All human relationships are a reflection of the divine relationship. If somebody is with you and they're just, this is who I am. When my friend who was that teacher I told you who traveled all the time, we were chatting, it was about time for her class. I said, your class is going to start, because we rendezvoused in a city that, well, she didn't live anywhere, but it was, we just met somewhere. And we were so excited to see each other. We were talking. I said, oh, it's 10 minutes before your class. Don't you have to get ready? And then she said two things. Too late. She said, meaning, what? And then she said, what you see is what you get. If I'm not ready now, 10 minutes is not going to make any difference. Just, it's so charming, isn't it? Just forget the pretense. This is what it is. And I mean, people who just say honestly and openly, you know, I really want to be married. I really want to have children. And if I don't have them in this life, I know I'm going to have to do it in my next life. I just do. It's all right. God understands. When your little daughter says, I want a beautiful dress for the prom, Mommy, you know, I really want to go to Disneyland. You don't tell them, no, you shouldn't. Okay, let's take you. Let's go and do it. And then we'll find out. Then we'll go on from there. Okay? It was a little too broad. I'm going to put that one aside for a moment. Okay, this one is about a very specific situation about some family that is facing great difficulty where the father of the family has been working hard to make money, but very difficult financial circumstances are coming. The family may go bankrupt. There's great goodness. Everybody's trying hard, but there's a cascading series of difficult karma coming down. And that's really tough. Some of the toughest karma that you ever have to face is not your own, but the karma that other people are having to face. But there's a clue in that. And some of you have heard me say this, so forgive me if I'm repeating for some of you. I am a person of a lot of willpower and a lot of energy, and even at this age, my body will still do whatever I asked it to do, except yoga postures. But it's very energetic. And I can't bend properly is what I mean, but I have the energy to do a lot, so I can take on a lot of things. And for many years of my life, I really tried to help people by trying to run their life a little bit for them, just pouring energy into it, trying to make it work. When my parents reached their declining years, they died within a couple of years of each other about a decade ago. And it was a long, slow decline. And toward the end, at the beginning of the end, I was running around like a crazy person, just trying to always make their life work for them. But I felt in that this tension. And the result of that was not what I had hoped it would be. And that led to a long, complicated series of revelations which are worth reciting. I wasn't afraid of my own karma. Now, of course, many people are afraid of their own karma, but nonetheless, I wasn't afraid of my own karma, meaning if God sent it to me, He would also give me the strength to work with it. I'm a devotee, as I said the first night, that was my one word. So I always think in terms of God's relationship, my relationship to God. But you can universalize that, however you put that. There's a trust. There's a trust that the universe is in balance, and if a challenge comes to me, it may take everything I have to meet it, but it wouldn't come to me if there wasn't a harmony in my meeting it. Also, I've seriously trained myself to believe that things are fair, and to have that kind of faith. Now, anxiety over other people's karma can be one of two things. It can be first, it can be anxiety over your own. Just this underlying, all-pervasive fear that nobody's in charge here, and that we could all just collapse for no reason. And that's the whole story I've been talking about this morning. So one has to really work to develop faith that we are not alone and that we are all part of this interactive web, and that there is a benign, loving force. The only word for it in English is God, Divine Mother, Heavenly Father, and that if we haven't reached the happy ending, we are not yet at the ending. We are in the middle of the book. And so it's all going somewhere that's good. If it's all going somewhere that's good, why are we so anxious about it when the picture caption is, this is the part where the hero suffers? This is where great disappointment sets in. This is this morning. We think ease and pleasure is the point. But the point is really to expand our consciousness. So when we see people around us being challenged, whether it's a crisis, a health crisis, a financial crisis, an emotional crisis, whatever it is, what are we actually afraid of? Is that they'll be challenged to learn something? Are we afraid within our own selves that if it happens to him, it could happen to me? Or the reverse that I went through was I realized I had perfect faith in myself, but I actually had no faith in anybody but me, which is kind of an ugly revelation to have to come to, isn't it? I myself am a child of the divine, but I'm not so sure about all the rest of you. I was having a conversation with someone during the break too about, the actual specific question was, if I have an illness, shouldn't I just conquer it with my willpower rather than go to the doctor? I thought, well, what is expansive and what is contractive? I don't need anyone's help. I can solve all problems myself. Is that really an expansive attitude? If you yourself are an instrument of the divine, you think this doctor might not also be an instrument of the divine? We open ourselves and allow people to help us. So we have to ask that question. For me, it was, I can solve problems, but nobody else on the planet can. If you have heavy karma, you will, of course, fail unless I jump in to help you. Wait a minute. This looks like, friendship, compassion, but it's a pretty thin disguise for the ego, isn't it? And also, it's sort of like, what a world I'm living in, where everyone's incompetent but me. And God loves me but no one else. And so we realize when people face difficulties, when we become afraid for them, that's actually what we're saying. Oh, look, you have karma you can't handle. Or else we're saying we have not yet come to peace with the fact that we learn through suffering. Now, you're in good company if you feel that way. Yogananda said he used to argue with Divine Mother. That's how he put it. Why do you make your children suffer? He said, but he would have to reluctantly concede that often there was no other way to inspire them to grow. Because if it's easy and pleasurable, we just contract down and just get into our little snuggly habit. And we don't really, the end of the life comes and we've really gone nowhere. We're less than we were when we started. Usually God doesn't allow that to happen. But if He occasionally does, is that a successful life? I managed to avoid all challenge and all growth. Wow, that was a good one. But people will suffer. But if you're not afraid of their suffering, I don't mean that you're not compassionate about it, but if you're not afraid of it, that's the best way how you can help them. Wow, we really have a big one that we're going through, aren't we? I've been in so many circumstances where I have done nothing to help except not be afraid. And it's just so restful for someone who's under so much stress already to be with someone who's just quietly comfortable with the fact that, yeah, this is not going to be easy. A friend of mine who died of cancer before she was 50, I think, or in her 50s, the day she found out that the doctors couldn't do anything more, I went to see her as it happened. And she had a beautiful husband, beautiful home, really exquisite, perfect life, except now that she was going to die. She was just weeping. How can I leave all this? She said, how can I do this? It's more than I can do. And I couldn't say that it was going to be easy. She was going to have to go through the dying process plus let go of all that. I just said, sister, it's a river of tears and a wall of fire. And I would be lying to you if I told you it was something else. But on the other side of it, you'll find light. You'll find light like you can't even imagine. And it was a river of tears, and it was a wall of fire. And then the last days of her life, I was there from her deathbed. She looks up with this blissful look and said, you were right. Just like that, you were right. And she just kissed everyone goodbye and just as peacefully as could be, just left the planet. You live through a few of those experiences with people, you live through a few of them yourself, then you can be really useful. And why not be useful? Otherwise we're just part of the spin. We were with all of you, with your prayer partners, see them in light, send them that light. Specifically, how you help someone who's suffering is you send them light. You don't send them, it's nice if they get a job, it's nice if the money comes through, but you don't say, you gotta get a job, you gotta get a job. You just send them light, lots of confidence, lots of receptivity to what's trying to happen, just lots of energy, good, positive, courageous energy, and they'll know what to do with it. Because maybe they need to go farther down before they come up. It's a bit like Swami Kriyananda grew up in Romania in the 1930s, and dental care was extremely backwards. They didn't have Novocaine then. His father worked for an American company assigned there. And he said, when they had to, and he had colitis and couldn't take milk, so his teeth were just full of cavities. And the dentist, because he didn't give the child Novocaine, he would only drill so far. So he put fillings on top of decay in the name of, being helpful. Which of course you can just anticipate, it was just a lifetime of difficulties. So you don't want to be the one who's trying to put a filling on top of a decay. You want whatever it is to happen to go as deep as it needs to go so that there'll be real healing after that. And challenge and suffering is not a curse. It's an opportunity, even for the children, whether it's happening to them or to their families. It's all part of it. Did I say this was easy? Did I say to anybody this was easy? No. But if you take this into your heart and really take it in, you'll have something that will serve you forever. It's worth the effort now. And, every time you want to take a simple contractive answer, like in this case, God is not in charge. God's in charge of the whole creation, but not here. Everybody's the child of God, but not that icky man over there. Oh no, everyone. Even if you can't get there, you can keep pushing at it. One of my friends, she complained about this really obnoxious man she had to work with. He was so difficult. she wrote Swami this long letter about how awful he was. It was all true. Every bit of it was true. Swami wrote back, "Oh, he just wants to be your friend. Just give him love." She wrote back to Swami, "I don't want to be that good." And it was just a perfectly honest answer. Yes, I know that's the answer, but I'm just not going to do it now. Right now, I'm just going to be really annoyed with him and think he's awful. But recently, I actually talked to that very woman, who's now a little older than I am. "How are you doing?" I said, "What are you doing these days?" "My job is just to love people," she said. "Everyone." It was so sweet because it was, you know, she'd just been through it enough and she'd now figured out, I do want to be that good. But intervening decades, you do the experiment, you find out the results, then you adjust accordingly. Okay, this person asks, how do you open your heart to other people? And how do you feel deeply connected to people? I was thinking about this one a lot. A very fundamental practice on the spiritual path is service. And at least the way we understand the path of self-realization. And service is, service meaning doing that which is of benefit to others, benefit to the world, and not just benefit to yourself. The Sanskrit word is seva. It's a very nice word. Ideally, you know, the best seva is when you're doing something that helps people spiritually, but all forms of seva becomes more than activity when you're doing it with a conscious awareness of trying to uplift, a conscious awareness of trying to be a channel for a higher power than yourself, and not doing just that which brings aggrandizement to you, but is really just for the sake of doing it. Last night I referred to the children's program we had where the leader of that program deputized the children. He put them all in the secret service, and they were all secret service agents of Divine Mother, and during the intervening week between their meetings, they were commissioned to do secret service. And so they had to come back and report that they had done things for people in their lives without them knowing, because that was the way of teaching them that it's not for getting the attention. It's just for the act of doing it. Now the reason we do that is that service is love made manifest. You can talk all you want about loving people, but then when they ask you to take them to the dentist and you're too busy because you have to get your nails done or you're watching a movie, it's like your friend is going to wonder, how much of a friend are you to me if when I need something from you, you're just too busy to give it? You know, you say you love your family, but you never do anything to help them. You say you love humanity, but you never do anything to make the world a better place. It all just becomes words. And that's half of it. The other half of it is we can tend to just become passive and just wait for something to change us. A woman wrote to Swami Kriyananda once and said, you know, nothing seems to interest me. I'm just not interested in anything. And Swami's response to her back was, well, nothing's going to give you energy until you give some energy to it. So if one feels that the heart is small or closed or dull or any of those things, you need to start moving energy through it as an act of will. We can't just sort of sit here. And the best way is to do things that you can hold in your hands and see with your eyes, because otherwise it's too easy to fool yourself. So one just starts looking for every single opportunity that you can find in which you notice that something needs to be done. I mean, as small as, and you all are generous-hearted people, so you do this obviously, but as small as you're picking up your dishes from the table and you pick up other people's dishes too and you take them in. You may not even think of that as anything, but that's an act of awareness that I can, by my own action, I can do something for these people. And you start just looking, paying attention to somebody other than yourself. Who needs what around me? Or thinking about what might make this person's life better and taking the initiative to give it. Because what that does is that begins to energize this theory. You can't just sit there and say, I think I'd like to open my heart. You know, you just sort of wait. Something has to happen. And also the act of serving others also purifies you. Because the energy, the way Yogananda put it, The instrument is blessed by that which flows through it. That's why people who give, every so often you see these studies, it's amazing to me what people commission. They commission and they come up with a study. People who help other people are happier. Wow, what a surprise. But they are happier because they are moving their self-identity from that tiny little dot to your well-being is also my well-being. I have a friend, and she just had such an enormously generous sense about her own home. She would just always have people living with her or staying with her, and just, it was so easy for her. And at that time, I would look at her, I was so protective of my own space. That was the only way I could think of it. I was always just nervous that somebody might intrude into my world. And I just said, how do you do this? And then year after year after year, I just kept having, the opportunity kept coming for me to open my home in hospitality. And now, God being so cute, someone says to me, how do you stand it? You always have people. And I thought, oh, how is that? But it didn't come because I sat there and wanted to be different. It's just, oh, this person needs a place to stay. This one needs a little help. This one needs a ride to the airport. This one needs a little money. This one needs a good home-cooked meal. This one just needs somebody to say, you're really not as terrible as they said you were, whatever it might be. But you start getting your antenna out. And so you do it first in action, and then you realize that the satisfaction of it, right? See, this is the thing, you see, right? What makes right from wrong, so to speak, is not some church edict, or it's not the Mount Sinai tablets or anything like that. What makes those commandments valid is when you start living them, you realize that it's expansive, and therefore it brings you closer to your source and you become happier. So if you notice that your heart isn't open, then just start right where you're standing. If you live with a woman who takes care of all your laundry, then make it easier for her. If other people are always cooking for you, then learn to cook a few meals yourself. If someone else is always doing the dishes, then learn to do them. Just right there, what's right in front of you. And you'll find, see, this is the thing about it. Remember what progress looks like? It looks like imperceptible. But if I kept going, which I'm not going to, but if I did, I would eventually get over there. But standing here just hoping to be over there, lifetimes will pass, you'll still be standing here. Because we tend to prefer the dramatic to the mundane. This I've discovered. We want the big dramatic gesture, and lacking, the opportunities to give someone a kidney, we never do the dishes. Okay. This question is about being a channel for spirits on the other side, or with angels, saints, devas, and so on. If a person has that natural ability, is it appropriate to use it? Is it appropriate to train other people to do it? The first thing to say is, of course, it's quite possible to see this world, to see dimensions in this world that other people don't see, because they're all there, and it's partly how we've trained ourselves. Swami Kriyananda said, I remember, about New Zealand, he said there's a psychic ability in the soil here. It's from the Maoris or whatever civilizations were here. Places develop consciousness. And he said his experience was that New Zealanders are more psychically attuned as a group. And the New Zealanders who come to America or other countries where we've met them often have more psychic intuition than other nationalities do. Americans are pretty solid, practical people. And we have noticed it. We noticed it here in the fact that every meditation we've had from the very first minute, there's a unique kind of stillness that isn't just that people are not moving their bodies, or even that people are not moving their bodies. We could all feel, all of us from America, we could all feel this other quality. And it wasn't like we were trying to, it was just there was something that happened. So I think it's a very real part. Every culture has its vibration. That's part of what causes the jiva to choose one or another. because it's appropriate for them. You've been learning the energization exercises outside, tense your muscles, low, medium, high tension. Swami Kriyananda, who's taught all over the world, said everywhere you tell people to tense with all the will they can muster, except in Germany. In Germany, you never tell them to use as much will as they can because they'll break their muscles, doing it. You have to really just modify them a little. In Hawaii, you have to really emphasize, how much will you have to put through because, why, let's just go down to the beach kind of energy. But if you have gifts like that, or let me say, if you have expanded abilities like that, first of all, you have to realize it's a talent like any other. Some people are good at being engineers. Some people have a natural gift for singing. Some people dance. Some people have an intellect to understand, certain things. The ability to see other realities, to understand other realities, it's important, if you have that, not to get all excited about it. It's just a talent like any other. And if you have a talent, you have to make certain decisions about how you're going to use it. First of all, is this good for me to do this? And if you could be a terrifically good singer, for example, but if in the act of becoming a terrific singer, you became so inflated in your ego importance, that would not be an expansive thing for you to use it, even though it's a great talent. I have a certain natural aptitude for the practice of law, which I discovered when Ananda had to go through a decade of litigation. We were being attacked from various sides, and in my mind, I'm a natural lawyer. I just can go there. I can carry the briefcase and walk with the shoes that click when you walk down the road like that. But I have been there, done that on a level that, I can hardly stand it. There's nothing expansive. I never considered going to law school. It would have been death for me, also because I immediately fall asleep in a law library. It's amazing. I can step into a law library with 3 cups of coffee, perfectly wide awake, and I'm asleep like that. It's like a protection. The brain says, we're not going to do this again. But I could have done it. At a certain point when I was involved in Ananda Village, which is way out in a rural county, and we did this huge political thing for various reasons. I wrote about it in the book, Swami Kriyananda as We've Known Him, at the end of which there was a movement in the county to run me for county supervisor, to take political office, which I'm nearly certain I could have won because I know how to do that. And so it was like, Swami, do I have to do this? But no, we're not going there. He said that we were in politics because we needed a particular objective, but we're not trying to get that kind of power. You don't have to do it. But there it was a talent, you see. Was it good for me? No, it was terrible for me to do either of those things. But, other things are good for me, like talking, sharing this teaching. This is very good for me. That's why I do it. I hope it's good for you. I know it's good for me. So, you have the ability to see the other side, to commune with saints, to commune with angels. First of all, don't get a big head about it. It's just something you know how to do. So then you ask yourself, is this good for me? And you have to ask that very quietly and carefully. Is this expansive for me? Is this habit? Is this the past or the future? Because, see, whatever talent we have, we've built up in the past. Is this the past or is this the future? I call this the difference between dharma, which is expansive action, and karma. You may have the karma to be able to do it, but is it your dharma to do it? And then if it is, just move forward a step at a time with sensitivity and see if you can be helpful and see if this expanded ability, if the universe wants it from you. And if in doing so you can see by the fruits that it really is of benefit. And if you're humble and don't get too excited about your own abilities, you'll also move in the right way. Swami Kriyananda was always very, very skeptical when people talk about actually channeling, Christ and masters like that, because usually, in order for any individual to be able to actually receive guidance from such beings, you have to do the work of lifting yourself up into that vibration. And it's not usually that somebody else is going to get all the messages and just hand them to you. Now don't misunderstand me. So I'm going to have a very solid intuition for you. But if your relationship with Yogananda is that you go to some medium over there and they keep telling you what he said and you take down your instructions and you go, I treat that with a little bit of a question mark. And if you yourself are always getting messages, but you don't even see in your own life a corresponding dedication to the kind of discipline that would be required to match that, be just a little respectful of your own possibility of being deluded. Because it's never wise to be too sure. But if you're always humble and just presenting what you believe to be true because you think it's true in a helpful spirit, it always tends to take care of itself. The experience will begin to teach you. I want to say to somebody, do you understand that? But I'm not talking to anyone. Okay. Okay. This is has several different questions, so let me just sort of work with one of it. Some of it I've answered in answering other questions. The essential issue, is the first question raised here is exactly the question that was asked at the beginning. You know, I'm not as calm, advanced, peaceful, loving, and wonderful as I would like to be, and I would like to be. You know, what do I do about that? The way I finally figured that out for myself, because I used to struggle an enormous amount with perfectionism, false perfectionism, that somehow if I wasn't perfect, I was nothing. And I would, those were my tears of self-pity that Swami would always talk about. I would become extremely agitated and upset because I wasn't perfect, but instead of actually just buckling down and doing work, I would just throw myself on the ground and be in a state of despair for a while, which he pointed out to me was not the same thing as actually trying to do something about it. It took me longer than you might think for me to understand that it wasn't the same thing, because look how miserable I am over my shortcomings. Here I am suffering so much. I feel so incredibly guilty and so incredibly inadequate. It was a long time before I understood that was not the same thing as changing myself. Swamiji was at a conference once. It was a New Age, what they used to call New Age conference. This is decades ago, where somebody was trying to persuade everyone that they were perfect just exactly the way they are and that they should love themselves exactly the way they were. And Swami stood up and he said, but there's so much about you that's not lovable. Because the fact of the matter is, we all have a long way to go. And if we're the slightest bit honest, this is who we are. And there really is no shortcut on this one. He even said once, the only way to self-acceptance is to have a clear conscience, which is not at all what people are saying. In meaning, why would you think that you're wonderful if you're not? But the corollary to that is, in all of these teachings, you must understand, are based on a solid degree of psychological health. Psychological health is the word I said. Because if you're twisted psychologically or not integrated and not self-aware enough, you can take this vocabulary and make a mess out of yourself. So if you can see that it doesn't connect with certain levels, it doesn't apply, it's not their next step. And people come to our community who want to renounce everything and live for God, and we tell them to just go out and get a job, because you're just trying to escape responsibility. You're not really doing this at all. You've just found one more drug that you think you're going to use. Or people will come and they'll want to meditate all the time, and no, you can't meditate. You're not mentally stable enough to meditate. You're trying to leave this world, but you're not going into a higher world. You're just going into a sideways world. So all of those things are true. It's not, we just, let's see, I lost that thought for a minute. Just a moment here. Do I have something to drink here? Somebody get, it's empty. Oh well, I lost it and I don't need to have it again. But what I was saying was just simply what I was saying at the beginning. Oh, the perfectionism and so on. Right. We just, if we always hold ourselves to a standard we can't meet, then we always get to feel bad. And if we always get to feel bad, then because we're so upset, we never actually have to do anything. And so there comes a real point where you just realize this is not serving me. That's what I was saying at the beginning. It's just a fact. Yes, this is what I'm like. And so my actual progress is not going to be as beautiful as I thought it was going to be. And so I need to work right where I'm standing. You know, and it's like often the single thing you have to do is just take, 10 deep breaths and just realize it's not so bad. And you can't solve the whole problem globally. You have to just attack it right in the tiniest part. I'll give you just a very small example, but a very real one. When I really began to overcome a lot of that anxiety, very practical, I discovered that there is a strong, other people know this, there's a very strong physiological component to stress. And I accidentally started swimming. I never liked to exercise, but then I discovered I love to swim. And I'm, no marathon swimmer, but I really like to swim. But it happened at a time when we had been through a very, very stressful experience in the context of the lawsuit stuff. And at the end of a day, we were in a hotel in another city, and I was just so nervous. I didn't know what to do. And there was a swimming pool, and I threw myself into the pool and just started moving back and forth through the water. And I shifted the physiological component of stress. And then from that point on, swimming became my savior some 20, 25 years ago. I would literally, when I would feel myself heating up mentally, I had the freedom to do this. I would get up from wherever I was and I would go throw myself in the nearest swimming pool. And I would just swim back and forth until I broke the physiological cycle. And if I can't swim, I'll go run around the block. Because the challenge is when you start feeling it build up to stop it. But see, all the battles are just, each battle is this big. It's when you're starting, stop it. But of course, you have to want to stop it. I discovered that you cannot weep and do deep rhythmic breathing at the same time. But of course, the first time I tested that, I decided I'd rather weep. But gradually I decided I'd rather not. So deep rhythmic breathing. And I find myself strong physical movement, just gets you going, gets you breathing deeply, you break the physiological cycle. And I mean, my life, my marriage, everything changed when I discovered that I could throw myself into a swimming pool because it never built up. You have to catch it right at the beginning, but you have to want to. Because the way negativity inserts itself, this is how it does it. I'm very important and you have to think about me. What are you upset about? Let's talk about it. It's saying that right inside your head, isn't it? Oh, this is an issue that needs to be processed. Let's process it. And then pretty soon, that's your priority. Swami Kriyananda tells the story of, he was very, very busy. He was earning the money to buy the land for the first Ananda piece, and he was driving across the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco, and he felt a cold germs, who are living beings. In fact, Yogananda says germs come from dark planets to cause, and they're evil beings. This is what he says. They're evil beings who come here to cause chaos for the pleasure of the chaos, that they enjoy the chaos. Yeah, he said, and also they come to be wiped out because they have the karma to be all killed at once, and so they come to be wiped out with antibiotics. I'm just repeating what I've read, but I love the far out stuff. So he's in the car, and he says this cold, he feels it just suddenly, it just comes into him. And the first thing that comes to his mind is, oh, you have a cold. Now you have to relate to having a cold. You're going to have a cold, aren't you? And then he suddenly realized, I don't have to relate to you. You're just invading me. I don't have to be any part of you. And alone in the car, he said in a very loud voice, get out, get out! Just like that. And he said he just ran away, just like that. Because darkness tries to persuade you that you have to relate to it. So this is why, above everything else, just want to open your minds to the possibility, oh, I don't have to. I just don't have to. I can go throw myself in the swimming pool, I can laugh it off, I can chase it away. Because once you're out of it, it ceases to exist. Because this came up at breakfast. I'm going to give you a break after I say this. There's a line in the autobiography of a yogi, thoughts are not individually rooted but universal. It's one of the most important lines in that book, and let me tell you what it means. We tend to think of ourselves as like the origin of our own feelings and our thoughts, and we feel like we're broadcasting them out, right? We think they start with us, because that's what it feels like, doesn't it? It's actually the reverse. We're a receiving station for all these different levels of consciousness, and whatever we are tuned to is what we get. And as long as we stay tuned to it, we get more of it. As ye reap, so shall ye sow. As ye sow, so shall ye reap. I mean like that. Whatever you're tuned to, you keep staying tuned. A person who's depressed knows all the reasons in the world why they should be depressed. A person who's happy looks at the same stuff and sees it differently. Change the station. That's what deep breathing, meditation, chanting, prayer, offering to God and gurus, begging for help, getting someone else to help you, all of these different things. You change the station. And then all of a sudden, what do you know? It's not even there anymore, isn't that so? This woman, this comes under the category of missing the point. In Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, which is this ancient scripture, he has all these aphorisms about the spiritual life. And he says, one of the problems that happens on the spiritual path is that people miss the point. I said, Swami, is there Sanskrit words for miss the point? He says, yep, that's exactly what he said. And we missed the point, and now I've lost the point. What was the point? Oh, I know. This goes under the category of missing. This woman came to Ananda village. She didn't last very long. She had a lot of magnetism, though, and Swami Kriyananda wanted to help her, and he was inviting her to satsangs and just trying to give her energy. She finally wrote him a note and said, I really am not going to accept anymore. I'm not going to come to any more of the events that you're giving, because when I'm with you, I can't remember my problems. So I feel like I need to stay in my own house and work on them. Yeah. But funny as that sounds, when we start actually getting free of them, we do get worried. No, you've just changed the radio station and they're not there anymore. Because in the now, remember, if you're here, where is it all? It's still happening out there, but you don't have to identify with it anymore, do you? Okay, let's take a break.
The world is waiting to tell you of a million things. The shout of daybreak, the flutter of a robin's wings. Come out and listen, there's magic for us all to share. For melody is everywhere. Whistle with me. God made all chillin' from laughter, so don't close your heart. The song of dawn won't be finished till you've sung your part. This world's a temple, and morning is a time of prayer. When melody is everywhere. Melody is everywhere. Good job.
All right, I was asked the most obvious question, most obvious because it's the one that really needs to be answered, that's what I mean, which is this all sounds good, but how do you actually do it? And so I want to just give you some slightly, I'm going to take this off for the moment and give you a picture of how it works a little bit in a different way. I used the word identify, and it's a very important word, that we don't actually become less than infinite. We just identify with something less than infinite. And I'll use occasionally, I have to use a Sanskrit word. And some of you have heard this already. The word is jiva. And it's approximately equal to the word soul, but it's more precise. The jiva is if you have the whole infinite ocean, and the ocean is made up of lots of little bubbles. Each one of those bubbles is a jiva. And throughout all eternity, through all of our incarnations, until we even merge back into the ocean, we are always one particular bubble. are unique. We are unique. And that's why people are so different. It's so fascinating. Yogananda actually says that every single cell in our body, as he puts it, is dowered with individuality. Individuality is the essence of creation. The story, whether true or not, that no two snowflakes are exactly the same, is still fascinating because it's an always ever-shifting reality. And we are, our sense of our unique individuality, that is not a delusion. It's just how we define that is where we can make it more and more wise. So we all do feel that I am an individual with a destiny. And this is intuition, isn't it? We just feel that. I was born for a purpose. We have that feeling inside of us. And we're very, very resentful when people try to diminish our importance. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who did a tremendous amount of work with death and dying, she was one of identical triplets, 3 of them. And they looked exactly alike, and their mother used to dress them alike. And she said all through her growing up, she was conscious of the fact that much of the time people did not know who they were talking to because they couldn't discern among those 3. Now, somebody might have thought that was lots of fun, but for Elizabeth, it gave her this extraordinary determination that every individual mattered, because it bothered her intensely not to be recognized for the unique individual being that she was. 2 of you last night used as your singular word, unique. And unique is actually a divine quality on the level of the jiva. And why? This is, from a certain perspective, I suppose we'll understand this, that we follow this individual journey through eternity. And even once we've merged into the ocean, that little bubble can always reemerge as an individuality. That's how you can pray to these great masters who have gone into the infinite, and still they'll return to you as that bubble, because it never goes away. So the jiva is what takes a physical body. You know, there's an animating force that makes a physical body. Now, because we try to create conception in a test tube, we know that they manipulate it chemically, and you've got your little sperm and you've got your little egg, and you put them together. And if you're trying to have that kind of a pregnancy, IVF, I guess they call it, or yes, in vitro fertilization, they actually will put sperm and ovum together, but not all of them start forming embryos, do they? And that's the mystery the scientists can't figure out, because it's the jiva that actually turns it from a chemical experiment into an embryo. And if no soul is drawn into that union, nothing more will happen from it. And whether that union takes place inside the woman's body or in a test tube, but the test tube has made it very interesting because you can see how it happens, and who knows how many times that happens within a person's body. But no jiva is attracted to come and take that cell and build on it and make a body. So it's the jiva that hangs out in the astral world and waits for a good opportunity. I'll tell you something even really more just bizarre. I'm just quoting now because I can't answer this. For any of you who are either conceived accidentally or have conceived accidentally, Yogananda says that when the soul spies a couple that he thinks would make good parents for him or her, Yogananda said sometimes that soul, the jiva, will project erotic thoughts into the room. I've had many people say, I don't know why we did it. But the jiva made you do it, apparently. When people complain about the circumstances of their birth, if you really are able to talk to them about karma, which is always right. I remember when this one girl was complaining, I said, honey, you know, your mother didn't ask for you. I mean, I didn't say it to her, but I thought of it. I don't mean that her mother didn't love her. Her mother loved her, absolutely. But, you know, it was a mess when you were born. What were you thinking? You know, it's not your mother's fault. You were the one who put yourself in there. Something about that appealed to you, and there you have it. Well, I think her mother is an angel, and that's why she did it. But anyway, there you are. So the jiva goes in and out. And then once the jiva gets there with the sperm and the ovum, it starts building a body. It uses the raw material that the mother provides. But the energy and the blueprint come from the jiva. And the jiva's following the karmic pattern that is inherent in the chakras. And the chakras are a non-physical, energetic pattern that when the physical body dies, the chakras go into the astral world, in the astral body. Because we have actually three bodies. We have a causal body, which is very subtle and not really what we're going to work with today. We have an astral body, and we have a physical body. And the blueprint is on this level. The blueprint, this is where the blueprint is. And then this is when it's manifested. This is the idea. This is the energy behind it. This is the manifestation of it. This building had a causal level. Somebody thought of building it. Somebody put energy into it and made an energy blueprint of it. And then someone put more force behind it, took the materials at hand and made a physical body. That's exactly what we are. So I'll put energy here because that's also true. Okay. So once the jiva separates from the infinite, which happened a long time ago, and I don't know why it happened, we have all three of these are our bodies. So the jiva identifies with the causal, the astral, and the physical body. And the jiva does not become those because he's still just a bubble in the great ocean of infinity, because the ocean of infinity is everything. But it no longer identifies with the ocean. Now it's identified with being a bubble. And primarily we identify with the astral and the physical. The astral is the karma and the chakras, which is the accumulation of absolutely everything we've ever done in any incarnation. It's all just hovering there. And this is an interesting subject in itself, which I can send you to the YouTube channel where I have classes on it. It's a fascinating subject. And so what happens is the jiva doesn't cease to be a bubble in the infinite ocean, but now it has defined itself as its body. And this is actually the jiva identified with the body, physical, astral, or causal, is what ego is. Okay? And ego is not, it's not the same as being egotistical and so on. It's ego as a concept. And the concept is that which is infinite has now identified with that which is finite. It hasn't become finite, it just now defines itself and identifies with that. Now the question I was asked was, it sounds great, you live in the center, you have a glimpse of it, but then something, let's say physical pain, just pulls you right back to your body, or emotional pain, or fear, or just fatigue, or just annoyance, whatever. You're floating free, and then something down here tugs at the garment of your freedom and sucks you back into this identification because you can't transcend it for the moment. You're sucked back in. Now, this effort to identify with a greater and greater reality, we talk about you have to overcome the ego. That's what that means. People get very confused about trying to overcome the ego. They think it means that you can't be dynamic, you can't be creative, you can't have a personality, you can't have force, you can't have will. You can have all those things. Believe me, this was the most powerful man I ever knew. And when he talks about Yogananda, you hear Yogananda's voice on a recording. I mean, he just knocks the roof rafters off. There's so much power there. This is no, blessed Jesus, meek and mild kind of energy. Swamiji always just had, in fact, we use this picture of Jesus because it has power behind it. He said no man who did what he did could have just been this little lamb going around weeping for everyone's sorrows. There had to be power there. So it's not a question of power, energy, creativity, will, determination, or anything like that. It's how much you have identified and defined yourself as those things, because you see that's what binds you. And here's the problem. Everything finite changes and eventually disappears. So the degree to which we have identified ourselves with the body, the ego, and everything that goes with it, then our happiness is always going to be subject to change. Now, that doesn't mean we don't live here. And see, this is what Kriyananda set the example on. He was the most committed person I have ever known. And he was also the least identified with himself of anyone I've ever known. But it was still his responsibility. After all, he'd come in, he'd set this going. There was karma. Well, actually, there wasn't for him, but he was acting out things that had to be done because there was desires or understandings that have to be fulfilled. So when you move from here to here, it still encompasses every level of it. But think about it in terms of perspective. If one little thing happens to you, you know, children are just so amazing because of the totality with which they identify with anything. You know, there's a spot of ink on my party dress, and it's just the end of the world. They just can't go to the party. They've thrown themselves on the ground. They're never going to eat again. They hate their friends anyway. Why did you buy me this stupid dress in the first place? Just because there's one little tiny, maybe it's just like a little bit of mud, and you say, honey, I can just wash that off. But during the time that the child is committed, you know, it doesn't make any difference that it can be washed off. There is no other reality. They have totally identified with that. I saw in Swami Kriyananda's eyes sometimes, you know, somebody would be coming to him, and believe me, it wasn't that he wasn't compassionate, with some tragedy or another that he knew was just a wave on the ocean. But with your little child, you don't start saying, get over it, kid. You say, all right, honey, you know, let me help you. We'll go in and I'll show you. See, dear, the mud washes right off. And it's not only that you're comforting the child and helping her in the moment, but you're also saying to her, look, honey, mud washes off. And so the next time she gets mud on her dress, she says, oh, Mommy, mud. And that's our lives, friends. Just incarnation after incarnation. And yeah, the stakes keep escalating, don't they? We lose our jobs, people die, deep things that we want to have happen don't happen. You know, we get old, just all sorts of things happen to us, and we go hysterical, mud on my dress, mud on my dress. And Divine Mother, just like our human mother, and this is why, you know, this vocabulary, like Divine Mother that I use so easily, I came to it slowly. But after time, I can't think of another way to say it that says it so clearly. Because whether or not one was gifted with a physical mother who took care of you like that, we at least know what the ideal would look like. So what we're saying is, there is a benign force in the universe that is always watching over us, just like a mother or a father would watch over us, and is guiding us from a level of wisdom way beyond what mere human parents can do, because they are also jivas with egos identified with their bodies. But so Divine Mother also watches us. And she's very sympathetic. In the Bible, Jesus, he doesn't use the word Divine Mother, he uses the word comforter. And when Yogananda interprets the words of Jesus, he puts that together. Comforter, my favorite word in the Bible. So that when we have that spot on our dress and are so deeply identified with it and so caught on the periphery that we can't remember past or future, at that point, Divine Mother will help us. Now, how much we receive that help, how much of that help she's able to give us, depends a lot on us, doesn't it? I mean, we've all had children who refuse to be comforted. Isn't that so? Well, we've had ourselves, we refuse to be comforted. You know, our friends try to help us. You know, I don't want to be helped right now. My girlfriend's son used to have tantrums. She'd put him in his room. He had a huge tantrum in his room, and it was quiet. She opened the door. Honey, are you done yet? His little voice said, not quite, Mommy. So she shut the door again, and he screamed for a little while longer until he was finished. There was nothing she could do. I mean, there really is nothing she could do. She just let him know that, okay, you're going to scream, you're going to be isolated. There is such a thing as karma. While you are screaming, you cannot be in the living room. I'm not going to listen to you. You're going to have to go sit in your room. But as long as you're going to scream, you can sit in your room. Divine Mother says to us, oh, you know, you're going to have a fit about it. There are many ways that we could fix this. And whatever it is, it will pass. And whatever it is, it's only a tiny speck of who you actually are. But yes, it is who you are. And this is one of the ways that the path of self-realization integrates so beautifully, really just with everyday life. Swami Kriyananda put it perfectly. He said, I never identify with Swami Kriyananda, but he is an event for which I am responsible. That's how he put it. And so he was always participating. And he took his responsibility for being Swami Kriyananda, and I don't mean in an important sense. He took his responsibility very seriously because, you know, karma, the law of life, had brought him to it, and there was no mistake. In his case, I believe it was our karma that brought him to us, which is he knew we needed help desperately, and he knew that Yogananda had a mission to fulfill, and he had to do it. I'm making the distinction because he wasn't compelled to do it. It was free choice. You know, I came to this world because I was compelled to do it because there were too many things that I didn't understand, that I didn't know, that I wanted, and so on. Do you understand the difference? It's an important distinction. But once you're here, you've taken it on. And you don't get out of karma by doing it badly, which is what people try to do. You know, okay, I'll be married, but I'll be really lousy at it. I'll build a house, but I'll make sure it's ugly. I'll raise children, but you know, I'm not really going to put any energy into it. It's too much trouble. I'll paint pictures, but I'm not going to really learn how to paint. You don't get out of it by doing badly. You're responsible for it. It's your event. But if you can always just look at it, and even so, I have a game that I play with myself because I'm a wordsmith. It's called, and sometimes when we've done projects or brochures, at the end of it all, you go through and you put captions under all the pictures. So I call it the picture caption approach to life. And so there is the heroine, me, and having a terrible day, sort of curled up on the bed in the fetal position, wishing, you know, that I could be anyone but myself. And I say, this is the part of the story where the heroine loses heart. You know, this is the part where she wishes that she could have, this is the part where the heroine wishes that karma was unfair. And you just, what are you doing? You're still the dot, even you're still on your bed with your wad of Kleenex sobbing your eyes out. But a tiny part of you is also expanding to see the other reality. I had a critical moment in my life. I used to cry a lot more. Tears of self-pity is what Swami called them. He was attentive but sympathetic only to a point. And I was dissolving into one of those fits. And I was stretched out on my bed, on my back. And there's a country western song called, I have tears in my ears from lying on my back, crying my eyes out over you. Okay. And this, I wasn't having a romantic heartbreak, but I was stretched out on my back and I was about to dissolve into tears of self-pity over something I have no idea what it was now. And as I felt the tears running like this, I started thinking about that song. Now, try to think of that song and cry at the same time. It really takes it out of you. And then I just started thinking, you know, I've been here before. I've been here where it's all too much and the little melodramatic me just falls onto the bed and just goes through this whole cycle, you know. Mommy has put me in my room and I'm going to have a tantrum. And she's going to let me scream as long as I want to scream. And I'm lying there just, you know, they're just beginning to reach my ears. And I'm thinking, oh God, it's so exhausting to go through this. You know, crying the good cry that women always have is just so tiring and your eyes look terrible and you get nothing done for the rest of the day. And I was pretty sure I wasn't going to spend the rest of my life lying on that bed crying. So there was going to be what? There was going to be a future, right? And I just suddenly decided, why bother? Where is this going to take me? Sooner or later, I'm going to get up off this bed and I'm going to deal with whatever it is. Why spend all this time in this state? And I just stood up and walked away. And I can't say for certain, but I certainly have rarely gone back there again, to that place. I was just done. Are you done having a tantrum? Not quite, Mommy. Okay, I'm finished now. And every single experience we have is a test of how much we are identified with the ego or how much we remember that we are the jiva. We are the infinite spirit. You still have to act it out. But you see, what happens is, when you see it from here, when you're looking at your life from like this, see how much more of it you can see? Okay, my child is having this really tough time now, so what causes can I put into place that'll really have the right effect? Instead of becoming so hysterical right now that I lose my judgment about everything. So death has struck me in a way that I didn't really want it to strike. Maybe death is going to strike me in a way I didn't really want it to strike. So I am responsible for this, but if I also think from here. And so it simply becomes an exercise. And so we ask ourselves, what happens when we get sucked out of the center off to the edge? Well, you do your best to get back to the center. And in fact, you see, getting back to center actually becomes the way you solve the problem. Because it becomes a problem when you lose connection with the center. And as long as, once you're back connected with the center, it's not a problem anymore. That's that strange thing I was talking about last night. How people so often tell you at the time that you're struggling the most that you look the best. Because often that's when you're working the hardest to get back to center. And so all of you is engaged in a very bright-eyed way sometime. And you're also learning something that maybe you would never have had. Well, I won't say maybe. Karma is always right. You would never, ever, ever be given the opportunity to face that challenge if it wasn't exactly the right size. That means that all those icky people in your life, everything, they're all exactly the right size. It doesn't mean they're nice, and it doesn't mean you have to hang around them forever, because you're responsible for the event. And if the event is going badly, you can change it. You can make it into something else. You're not meant to just suffer and die there. You may have to do something about it. But it's always fair what you're being asked to deal with. You see the difference? It's very important. Yes, Roger.
Can like sort of health issues ego related, and if they are, can you sort of get overcome health issues by becoming more in tune with your jiva?
Yes, but that has to be qualified. The question is about physical health issues. This is a very delicate, it's a very subtle issue, okay? Because a lot of people have a lot of teachings, and a lot of people have a certain picture of what's true, but don't necessarily have the whole picture. Last night I talked about the screen like this. A lot of people are saying things that are very true, but they don't necessarily know a big enough picture to have it be completely true. One of the reasons that we put the masters in front of you and speak of Yogananda especially and hold up Autobiography of a Yogi, these are self-realized beings. They have climbed the entire way to the top of the mountain. They're more than just 10 feet ahead of you. Somebody who's 10 feet ahead of you can tell you lots of things you don't know because they have crossed that terrain, but they also might be heading down a cul-de-sac. And even though they're well-meaning, they don't know that. And this is why I often say to people, lineage matters. Even though you might not know it or even have thought about it, trust me, it matters. Because if you're going to go on a long journey, you want to make sure that they know how to get you there. Now, health, material manifestation, I just read some girl on Facebook finally has a boyfriend, and somebody wrote, "Congratulations on manifesting this wonderful boyfriend." I thought, my God, I think he was there before she got there. You know, it's like, really? And I know that's common language, but I find it, this is how I put it. It has enough truth to be attractive and enough wrong-headedness to be dangerous. Because one, if I've manifested you, whoa, does that ever make me something really special, doesn't it? Whoa. It just becomes very confusing. Also, it's just not true. You know, we don't. We're all in this interwoven web, and we intersect where we're meant to intersect by karma. Now, at the same time, mind, thought, will is this tremendous power. And this whole universe is tremendously subject to the magnetism that we put out. So yes, you can affect a great many things in your universe by the kind of magnetism you put out. But the way to make that magnetism really effective is to identify with the greater reality and try to be in tune with the greater reality and then act with force in harmony with that reality. Now, this actually comes back a little bit to the suicide bomber, I realize. Part of our problem is that the ego has a certain definition of what is good. And the jiva has a very different definition of what is good. Okay? What the ego wants, the ego has a very, very simple definition of what's good. It's easy, and it is pleasurable. I mean, just think about it. Define in your mind, just casually, what's good, what's bad. What's good is always easy and pleasurable. What's bad isn't. Okay? Now, if you're raising a child and you raise the child on the principle of easy and pleasurable, you're going to be taking care of that child to the end of your life, aren't you? Because that child is never going to learn anything that he or she was born to learn. Because easy and pleasurable is not good if you are thinking in terms of progression. That we're not just meant to sit here, we are going somewhere. And that gets us into the jiva, assuming a body, living in the astral world, karma that has to be worked out, lessons that have to be learned, moving from the edge more and more into the center. What's going to make that happen? Probably not easy and pleasurable, just a guess. Probably something that challenges us and forces us to identify with a greater reality. For example, my body's not working very well. And all the plans I had based on my body working so well, I'm not going to be able to do those. So right away, either because I'm totally identified as a physical being, my happiness and my reality and my hope just shrinks down into this tiny little nothing, or I have to see myself as bigger than just my physical body. So sometimes you need to stay sick. Now that doesn't mean you have to passively accept that you're sick, but the lesson is to be dynamic as you can within that, but not necessarily to return to easy and pleasurable. And sometimes the lesson is to stop smoking, drinking, not exercising, eating ice cream, holding wrong thoughts, and hating your brother-in-law so that your body can get well. And you just have to follow this through with some subtlety and some intuition. But merely because you can't, for example, heal your physical body, and I've had what I call refugees from this teaching. I've tried and tried and tried, and I still have this asthma. What's wrong with me? Well, maybe nothing at all, dear. Maybe the karma here is not about healing the asthma. Maybe it's about all the potential growth that you're going to have when you start expanding from the event for which you're responsible and see where it'll take you. Now, still, one should try. The ideal blueprint is health and well-being and comfort, and the ability to manifest is part of the divine blueprint and part of the divine training that we're supposed to be getting. You don't tell your little child, oh, don't try for the A, you're not meant to get A's. Don't try to learn to play the piano. You're not meant to learn to play the piano. Go ahead, try to play the piano. You may be really lousy at it, but go ahead and try. Because you'll move forward, you'll expand yourself to do it. So there comes these very subtle points where we have to ask, what is the lesson here? And how do I live it? And Yogananda says, you can regenerate an amputated limb, he says it that strongly. But it's a progressive learning. And if you think in terms of many incarnations, you do your best with this one, and then you just see what happens. You figure out how to make the event go as well as possible, and when you see that you're not really going to be able to have the picnic outside because it's raining, then you have to adjust, and you have the picnic indoors, and you work with it. Well, I'm not really going to be able, seemingly, to make this better, so let me concentrate on what I can do. I can be cheerful in the midst of it. I can be compassionate to others who also have failings that they can't overcome. What is the real karma here? What's coming? Does that make sense? I thought this was related to suicide bombers, and it is, but maybe the thread might be too long. So let me ask if there's any other questions before we go there. Yes, Marie.
So just going back to the sperm and ovum meeting. And
We're back to the sperm and ovum.
the
Okay.
soul. What say that baby dies at 16 weeks gestation and that soul hasn't had a, it was chose to come onto earth to, resolve past karmas, but that pregnancy doesn't last and that soul hasn't had a chance to.
Okay, you're presuming that 16 weeks wasn't long enough for it to do anything. Its karma may have had to do with the mother losing a baby.
Oh, but that's the mother's karma.
Well, but the child may be cooperating with. Maybe the mother has something the mother has to learn. Or here's another thing. Maybe the child, this is something that Yogananda said. Sometimes babies that don't go full term were suicides in previous lives. Not always, but sometimes. So that they want a life, but the karma of having thrown a life away causes them to have more difficulty. So sometimes pregnancies that are terminated are that the child is, just trying, has to pay off. The soul has to pay off. So you don't know. This is why you go back to our idea of what it's supposed to look like. It's always exactly what it should be. And so whatever that little cycle is, maybe, I'm going to just spin stories. Marie, you've teased me because you asked me once, do you have a story for every possible reincarnation? Well, yeah, I do actually. I have a story that helps to illustrate the point. Maybe at that particular point in the woman and the man's life, this person wants to help you for some particular reason. But it isn't the destiny to live out a whole life with you. But it's just maybe you just need their comfort or their company. Or pregnancy is what the karmic situation requires, but not necessarily parenting. So the soul will just play that out. Because you see, to the jiva, again, we think it's such a big deal to be born and die. Yogananda also said, this is fascinating to me, in the astral world, everybody, we're communities, we're friends in the astral world. Everybody who goes into a death and return, they meet all these great people up there, don't they? Some of them they recognize, some of them they don't. But there's a whole crowd of folks that welcome you, that you know. It's very weird. Okay, and when we're born here, there's at least a few folks who are welcoming us here, aren't there? And there's the birth announcement goes out and Facebook and everything, everybody knows. Everybody's, hooray, hooray, someone was born. Master says, a celebrated birth on the physical plane is a funeral on the astral plane. Oh, Marie's not going to be with us anymore. Who's going to manifest the mangoes? And so we miss you. And then Marie gets old. Let's have you live to a ripe old age. And all of a sudden in the astral world, oh, Marie's coming back. And then Marie, or whoever you are at that point, and that's why people are so often so happy when they get into the astral world. And they're not happy when they come back. Because they were with perhaps others who've passed over, but just all the people they love. So for the baby to go for 16 weeks and then go back, it's like, well, that was a short trip, welcome home. That's what it looks like from this side. And because the ego is just as much astral as physical, it's just that the way the physical body works, it's so dense, most people lose touch with it. Swamiji lived in the astral world as much as in the physical world until he was about 9 years old. Then he just really had to settle here because he couldn't do what he had to do. But most of us forget almost immediately. And little babies less. There's that wonderful story, true or otherwise, about the child who demanded to be alone with the newborn baby. And the parents could only think sibling rivalry, so they were afraid of leaving the 3-year-old with the newborn, but finally they did, but they left a baby monitor in there. I don't know if this is a true story or not. And then the 3-year-old says to the baby, please tell me about where you just came from. I'm beginning to forget. Did you have a question?
Is there any way that we can affect or do anything about our karma, or is it set in cement?
Well, how you relate to the karma you've already set determines what kind of karma you have after that. The question of how much is karmically set and how much is free will, please don't ask. Some of you may already have done so. This is my nightmare question. Actually, they ask it in India all the time. Everybody asks, how much is karma, how much is free will? And Yogananda, I found a quote from him recently. He said, almost everything is karmically determined. Only a little bit is free will, and that little bit can only be discerned by a very wise person. So here's how I relate to the question of free will. It's actually in the Ask Asha book back there. This question comes up really big. It's like, I know that my actions affect my experience. You know, if I had just lain on that bed and just cried my eyes out, I knew that it was going to affect my experience. I'm not so lost, you know, in the ephemeral moment that I can't see the eternal. And if all of that is still predetermined, it seems to make a difference what I do. And if I just go to bed and eat chocolates for the next couple of days, the consequences of that are not going to be positive. So I extrapolate from that to feel that I have to pay a lot of attention because it sure seems to matter. And if on some abstract level out there somebody or someone or something knows that I'm just a little marionette, that's fine, but I don't feel like one. And some people are very, very obsessed with theoretical questions. I am completely concerned with practical questions. I loved Yogananda's answer. That was the best I'd read. It seems to make a difference. However, a great deal of who we are is set in motion already, but it just already is. You know, at the age that I'm in, it's a little more obvious than it was to me when I was 19 and 20. But I've made a whole lot of choices in my life that are now having an effect. So I don't have to look very far in order to be able to see. In my early 20s, I stopped doing yoga postures, and I've never really started again. And it would have been a smarter idea, you know, if I kept doing them. And I'm compensating and doing a little yoga and so on like that, but just as simple as that made a difference. But when I was 18, I became a vegetarian, and I started drinking lots of water. And the consequences of that have been very positive, and I can see them in me. So it appears to matter. Was that all predetermined? I don't know. From my perspective, it didn't feel like it was. But you can absolutely affect the next minute of your life by how you behave in this minute. I mean, think about it. Of course you can. You know, and when we just sit around and, oh, why is this happening? Why is this happening? Why me? Why always me? Well, that's who you get to be. I have fun once standing in the mirror, just making all the different faces that this one could have turned into. You know, just how I mean, sometimes you see someone and it's just shocking, the face. I've seen portraits of famous people and I think, wow, if I had that face. Abraham Lincoln, an American president, of course, was once accused in court of being two-faced. And Lincoln stood in front of the judge and he says, Your Honor, I put it to you frankly, if I had another face, would I be wearing this one? But sometimes I see portraits of people and I think, oh, that poor person. You know, if that's the portrait he put forward, because you just see what they've become. And if you stand in front of the mirror and just move your face around, you know, with different attitudes, you'll see amazingly how it will shift. We just become, until 40, you have the face God gave you. After 40, you have the face you made for yourself. And that's the free will part of it. I once, not once, but more than once, I've been in the supermarket, and I've seen like maybe a 45-year-old mother and a 15 or 16-year-old daughter. And sometimes the mothers have, perhaps they've given birth to many children and have been very busy. So their physical glamour is no longer their highest priority, nor particularly accessible to them anymore. So they're looking pretty used up. And then there's a 15-year-old girl who's got her hair and her makeup and so on like that, and her clothes are just so, and she's just bopping along with her mom. And you can tell that they are still exactly the same person. that there isn't a chance in the world that that 15-year-old girl isn't going to follow the route that her mother's got, because she's got a young face on, but everything behind it is exactly. But you can see that the girls think she's not going to be, because she's living so identified with right where she is that she can't see the past and she can't see the future. But all of that can be changed in a heartbeat as soon as you wake up to it. And that's the element of free will somewhere that's in there. And it's a very, very, very simple question. Are you happy? Are you as happy as you can imagine being? Would you like tomorrow to be better than today? And then how important is that to you? How much are you willing to change? I watch myself every day. I know that I could always do a little more, but I don't always. And when the next day I have the consequences of that, well, I have nobody to blame but myself. I don't mind. My attitude is this: I'm not proud of everything I've done, but I see no reason to be ashamed either. It's just, that's the way it was. If I could have done better, I would have done better. That was my mantra for a long time. If I could have done better, I would have done better. And that's just this very calm acceptance. Karma is fair. And if I find myself in it, then just start reversing whatever got you there. And this, I will take just a minute. This brings me to the suicide bomber, and then I'll give you this little picture, which is really helpful, and then we'll call it enough. Everything is about moving forward. And if we think of forward as moving from the rim to the center, and we can also think of it in terms of becoming more expanded. See, it's a difference if you think of it. This is a very contracted self-definition, and the closer we get to the center, we become more expanded in our self-definition. So we have these two words: expansive versus contractive. And you cannot, none of us can, zip from total identification here to total identification with the infinite. We're going to get there moment by moment. Now, it's not linear, but it is just, I do this and it has a consequence and that has a consequence. I change my energy. In every single situation you're in, there is an expansive response or a contractive response. You might also think of it, there's a low energy response or there's a higher energy response. I feel really tense, for example. I could do a few yoga postures, or I could have a glass of wine. Okay? Which is the low energy response, which is the high energy response, which is an expansive direction for me, which is a contractive direction for me. Just as obvious as that. I want to have some ice cream. I could eat the entire pint. Or I could quickly pour half of it down the garbage disposal and then just finish what's left. Okay? It's still a lot of ice cream, but eating half of it is expansive. I could, when someone who's close to me says something I don't like, I could say, "You terrible idiot, how dare you treat me like this?" Or you could say, "Excuse me, honey, I don't really like it when you talk to me like that." One is expansive, one is contractive. One takes a little more energy, one takes less energy. If you just do this, nothing else, absolutely nothing else, forget the masters, forget everything. Just the next time you have a choice, put out a little more energy, try to be a little more expansive in your thinking. If you just do that, and I'm not exaggerating, your whole life will be different. Because that's all it is. There's nothing else to it. That's what I was saying at the beginning. This isn't dogma. It's just the way we're made. This is experience. These guys are really helpful because they've done the experiment and they have a lot of good things to say. And they're also cheering from the background and planting really good. I mean, if your poor little jiva can project thoughts into you, think what the masters can do. They can really inspire us with the right energy. And that's why we start praying. And all the rest of the practices you see, it's because you're right on that cusp, and boy, we need help. And you call on your guru to help you, and he will. And all of a sudden it pops into your head that I can do this, and something completely new comes. Being a disciple is realizing I need help. That's all. Now I'm going to give a tiny little thing about the suicide bomber, but I'm not going to really do it, just this tiny bit. Sometimes a perfectly selfish person who's never ever had an ideal in his life and has never been willing to do anything for anyone, who actually is willing to die, no matter how misguided the principle, it may actually be an expansive action for him. And that is really hard to take. But it might be. But then you go back to, do you think this whole planet is meant to be easy and pleasurable? See, the premise of that he shouldn't do it is that this planet is meant to be easy and pleasurable. And if you've got a soul here who's making it not easy and pleasurable, then there's something wrong with the whole system. Maybe not. We're all here to learn what we have to learn. And this gets complicated, but karma's always fair. If we didn't need to be on a planet where people are learning by blowing themselves to bits, or they're going backwards, they could also be contracting, but they're still here with us doing things that threaten our well-being, our karma would not have brought us to this planet. We would be on a nicer one. When Yogananda was asked, do we always come back to planet Earth? Oh no, he said. There's countless planets for us to incarnate on, and they're all at different vibrations of goodness. And we're in this is a very mixed planet right now. Lots and lots of good, and whoa, lots of terrible. But those terrible souls are jivas just like you and me. Because remember, once we start expanding from this, we start overlapping, don't we? And whether or not this dark little soul blowing us to bits knows that, nonetheless, very quickly we're all one, aren't we? It's just that soul is working out a different delusion than you are, and what I need, apparently, being on this planet, is to be scared to death by the possibility that these madmen are going to blow this planet to bits and kill a lot of people that I love. I mean, it's, whoa, that's a challenge, isn't it? What am I identified with? This little tiny, or the whole here that sees it all as just the same? I think that's enough for the morning. I think it's enough to give us indigestion already, so I think we should have another song, though, before we stop. Okay. Why don't you do the Channels song? This is a song that Swami Kriyananda actually wrote very seriously to help. You can find your guitar. That's a beginning. He wrote this song seriously to help bring humanity back in tune with the natural world. And so, but he wanted us to understand that the natural world is not itself a deity, but is an expression of the same infinite spirit that we are. But everything is symbolic and everything has something to teach us. So that's the essence of this. And it's a sing-along.
The sing-along is the chorus. Mother, we thank you, your joy shines in everything. Open these channels that the world once more may sing. Again. Mother, we thank you, your joy shines in everything. Open these channels that the world once more may sing. Birds sing of freedom as they soar lightly on the air. So may our hearts soar high above all curves and care. Mother, we thank you, your joy shines in everything. Open these channels that the world once more may sing. Trees standing firm hold the secret of inner power. Give us, when tested, strength to endure. Mother, we thank you, your joy shines in everything. Open these channels that the world once more may sing. This is a really high voice. Stars send a message of light through eternity. Lord, when in darkness your radiance we see. soft and fragile, stay fragrant though pressed to the ground. May we thus learn forbearance, for in kindness love is found. Mother, we thank you, your joy shines in everything. Open these channels that the world once more may sing. Mountains remote and still hint at higher worlds unseen, so may our lives be soaring and serene. Mother, we thank you, your joy shines in everything. Open these channels that the world once more may sing. Rivers seek passage unhindered by rock or tree, so may our lives be, so may our lives flow steadfast toward the sea. Mother, we thank you, your joy shines in everything. Open these channels that the world once more may sing. Mother, we thank you, your joy shines in everything. Open these channels